Is there such a thing as too much luck? Is there such a thing as too much fun? Messing around, wondering how it's taken so long. I'm really so strong. It's not too much at all.
Oh, hello everybody. Welcome to Too Much. There's a lot going on in the world of the news right now, so I just want to start us off with maybe we take a collective breath, just because it feels like it's been hard to breathe lately. So here we go. 3, 2, 1.
I kind of
Hi.
jumped the
Hi,
gun the
Jayce.
first time. How are you doing?
I am so happy you're here.
I am too. It's been a minute. How are you? How's life?
Despite the world and the state of our nation, I feel okay. I feel better than I felt in a while, which always feels a little bit, there's a bit of like asymmetry there, but I'm grateful to feel okay during such tough times.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing. I mean, being okay is enough because it's not bad, and so that's only way is up. So just keep that momentum and keep focused.
Exactly. So let me tell everybody who we have this week. Let me tell you who Jayce is. Jayce is an incredible, incredible human being who I'm very, very excited for you guys to learn more about. Jayce Baron is an Afro-Latinx, globally recognized, award-winning screenwriter, author, executive producer, director, political figure, and advocate for the Black and Brown LGBTQ plus community. As the founder of Jayce Baron Creative House, Jayce has consistently demonstrated a passion for fostering conscious conversations within the community through various creative and impactful mediums. For over a decade, Jayce has seamlessly merged his entertainment career with his commitment to social justice. He contributes to platforms like NBC and hosts a globally recognized independent podcast. In early 2022, Jayce executive produced and directed the groundbreaking documentary Beyond Ed Book, alongside Emmy Award-winning Pose star Haley Sahar. The film, which premiered on AMC's streaming platform, All Black, received accolades at numerous national and international film festivals and earned several prestigious awards. His work has also been spotlighted by leading organizations and media outlets, including Forbes, the City of Los Angeles, Billboard Magazine, The Hollywood Reporter, Fox, GLAAD, the Human Rights Campaign, Gilead, and more. Jayce's advocacy has been widely recognized. In 2016, he was invited to Capitol Hill to raise awareness about sexual assault and played a pivotal role in the passage of SB 813, a California law revoking the statute of limitations on rape charges. That same year, he was honored as one of the 16 heroes alongside Joe Biden, Ashley Judd, and other national leaders. In December 2023, Jayce began his journey as a former elected official when he was unanimously elected to his neighborhood council in Los Angeles, where he served as and chaired the Homeless and Social Justice Advocacy Committee and as a member of the Government Relations Committee before resigning in 2025. Through his visionary leadership, creative storytelling, and unwavering dedication to social justice, Jayce Baron continues to create meaningful change across entertainment, advocacy, and politics. Wow. Did that feel good?
It does feel good, and thank you. Sometimes I don't read my bio often, and so when I hear it, I'm just like, oh wait, that did happen. I mean, the 16 heroes, I remember that was so significant, and I think that speaks to just being grateful in the present moment because if you're not present, life will just keep going on and on and on and on and just kind of pass you up. So it's good to hear those things. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I have made
Mhm.
a difference. I've done some important stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So I want to go to the very beginning, like your origin story. Did you know that you were going to pursue a creative path at a young age?
Um, no, I will say. So I'm born and raised in Riverside. And so for those that don't know where Riverside is, it's about an hour away from Los Angeles, an hour east inland. And it's not. a small town, but it's still California. I'll say that, but it's not Los Angeles at all. And so the creative arts was always at a distance for me. And thankfully, my parents, a lot of people who live in Riverside stay in Riverside, but I remember going to see like the Lion King play at the Pantages Theater with my grandmother who came in town. And I remember a lot of my family's from the East Coast, and so when we were growing up, Christmas and Thanksgiving, that was on the East Coast, and so when we were there, we saw the Rockettes and we saw all these different things, and so I was exposed to probably more than your average Riversidean at a young age, just because of my parents being one from the East Coast, and then my mother also she is from Panama, and so I was raised in this very interesting environment, and so I didn't really see it as a way, but I knew that I wanted to be in entertainment in some capacity. And so I actually studied communications and public relations in college. That was my degree. And I remember I wanted to do PR because someone said, Jace, you like to talk a lot. And that's what PR people do. They talk. And I was like, oh, sure, I could get paid to talk. And so I started researching public relations and I saw the industry and it kind of stuck with me. And so that's what I pursued in college. And then the rest is history.
So, what was your first, I guess, creative job post college?
Well, I've always had a job. I've been working since I was 15. I was making pizzas and working at Cold Stones and Abercrombie and Fitch. Um, my first creative job out of college, though, I was doing marketing and branding for a small boutique store on Melrose Avenue. And I had just moved from Orange County to Los Angeles, and I was so excited to be in LA. I'd always come to LA for partying and stuff like that, but I always saw LA at night. So now I was working there during the day. I had my apartment, and it was interesting because I graduated during the recession, and so I graduated 2010, and so the economy was still kind of rebuilding. And so I had worked so hard for this college degree that I was now in debt in. And my first creative job, I was making more money in college than I was doing that. And that was just, obviously you could relate. You realize, hey, creativity it doesn't necessarily, um, depending on how it's framed, especially when you first get in there, it doesn't pay the same amount. And I remember realizing that. And for me at the time, I was, 22 years old. I was like, I need my money. And so I ended up quitting and going back to serving restaurants. But then that was a blessing in itself, which I didn't even realize then because that actually got me to New York when I moved a year later because I was able to just hop on a plane and move and work anywhere in a restaurant. And so from there, I started a PR company when I was 23 years old in New York City and I represented anywhere from poets to writers, and I just kind of continued on that journey. But one thing I wanted to say is that I always wanted to incorporate advocacy work into the work I was doing. One of my internships I had when I was in college was at Bravo, and I remember the biggest thing was, the Housewives of Atlanta premiering, and it was such a big deal, and it was so exciting for me. But one thing that I did wanted to add to the excitement of entertainment was advocacy work and some type of meaning behind it. And so that's kind of how I ended up in like the PR world, of working with poetry and writers in New York, and it's been a journey for sure.
How did you know that you wanted to do advocacy work? Was it just something that you felt like beating inside of you from a young age, or were you exposed to something that then made you feel like you wanted to do something bigger than just, think about yourself or make money for yourself?
um, it's a culmination of things, to be honest. I think that there's things I realized later on in my life that I recognized as a child. Like, for example, my grandmother, she was part of Jimmy Carter's friendship force, which she would travel to different countries all over the world as a black woman in the 1960s and meet and interact with people and learn from them. And that was my grandma. That's who she was. But that's all I knew. And so when I got older as an adult, I was like, oh, okay, that did have an influence on my desire for traveling and exploring and learning people and learning their lifestyles and their desires and like what are their needs, what do they have that we can all work together. Um, to make the world a better place. And so it was there were little seeds that I recognized as an adult that were planted my entire life, but it just took my lived experience to recognize those things.
Yeah, I do think like your family lineage or your family values make a difference. We always had such a big emphasis in our home around, making sure that you were looking out beyond yourself. Like that was very big in my family narrative. I wanted to learn a little bit. I want to go back a little bit because it takes a lot of guts to start a PR company at 23. It takes a lot of creative courage, which frankly, like I did not have. Like when I realized how much money you made in these creative jobs, like my intern at a magazine in college, and when I realized the starting salary there, I was like, oh, there's no way I can survive in Manhattan on that starting salary. And so I immediately was like, that's not an option. So I looked to other realms to try and figure out how I was going to like be, adjacent, I guess, adjacent to sort of my creative dreams. And I didn't really get the courage or the guts until a couple years ago. Like I did not like pursue a fully creative life until a couple years ago because I wanted to make sure that I would be able to make enough money and survive. And the bottom falls out, especially at 23, it's a very scary decision. So how did you come to terms with that choice? Like what emboldened you to take that big of a leap of faith in yourself?
Too many no's. Yeah, it was literally at that point survival, because again, I had my college degree and I had got a job in California that was paying less than serving at a restaurant. And then I moved to New York, and then I remember New York, their thing was we don't hire people without New York experience. And
Ugh.
so I was like, hold on,
I got
I
the
didn't.
same talk when I moved to LA, by the way. Like my producing experience in New York didn't matter because it wasn't in LA. And I was
That is
like, it's
so bizarre to me.
Viacom. I was like, it's what? I was
Yeah,
like,
it's
okay.
like it's actually pretty prestigious, but that's another story for another day. So yeah, I needed money, and so luckily I had friends who were just starting out in their world professionally, and they needed help. And because I had a
Mm.
degree, I was like, hey, let me help you. Pay me X amount of dollars per month, and I'll run your PR, and I will make sure that you're out there and you're exposed and you're booking gigs, and it just worked. And then from there, I always say, you don't go to an event and leave without a job. And so with all these events that would come out, I would just me of course talking like they told me in high school, talk to these people, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, we want to work with you." And so I had learned how to build websites. I learned how to, use social media to my advantage to make something look. Um, I don't want to say bigger because I want to minimize what I was doing, but make it look professional so that people would trust. And a digital footprint is so important, especially these days. But back then, I realized that. Um, And so I just put work into building this company as a PR brand, and it really was survival because I wasn't going to go back to LA. I wasn't going to go back to California, and I wasn't going to ask my parents for money either. And so it
Yeah.
was what do you have to do to make a living, do what you want to do, and just keep building.
No, sometimes, I think about this all the time, and it was so hard for me to grasp in my 20s. And now it's like my immediate response, which is rejection is always redirection. It is always in service of you. And I just really did not get that in my 20s. And I can look back now at every instance in which there was a no, or there was a something that like I didn't get the job, or the boyfriend dumped me. And every time I'm like, ugh, thank God. Thank
Yeah,
God I was being
yeah.
saved and
Then
I
you have
didn't
to
even know.
realize years later, you're like, oh, that's what that was for. I get it
Right.
now. And but we have to go through those lessons in life for us to fully grasp and then apply it moving forward. I always say when God says no, you say thank you. Because there's so many, I could look back and hundreds of situations where I was told no that ended up being a huge blessing. And so, it's all about surrendering to the universe and just going with the flow and just putting your best foot forward at all times and like, yep, let the universe do the rest.
It's really hard to do.
I didn't say it was easy.
I'm a Virgo, so it's like control
Okay.
relinquishing of control is essentially been the hardest challenge for me. Even knowing that like in the times where I've surrendered, they've been like the best years of my life. I've made more money those years. The times I've surrendered, I've uh, been so amazed by what unfolds because the universe dreams bigger than me. But it's very hard to do. How do you still have a hard time with it, or did you figure it out? What's the secret to the
Um,
universe, Jace?
oh, this- just do it. No, it comes and goes, especially with maturing, because, with just going for it, there does come and there's a potential for instability. And so, like we always said, the rent is always due. Your car note, your mortgage, those are just bills that while we're in this vessel that we call a human body on this life, we need to be able to function comfortably. And so I never say that, oh, it's just so easy to do, because sometimes it's just not, because you have to put things into perspective before just taking a leap of faith. Um, but again, it's just leaning on that faith from the lessons
Yeah.
that you had before to just carry through and just know that everything's going to be okay. Because really, the basic needs of a human being is just water, shelter, oxygen, clothes on your back. A lot of the things that we have we're spoiled. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it is a comfort thing for sure. And sometimes it gets uncomfortable, physically and emotionally. But, you just have to go through it. And that's something that I'm relearning again, in more recent years, because you work hard and you expect things to go a certain way, but we've been through a pandemic, we've been through a strike with SAG and WGA, we've been through all types of things. I was a caretaker for a couple of years, with two different individuals, and those were things that I was not planning to happen. And so we just have to just keep putting our best foot forward and thinking about those times of, okay, I remember when, you know, that person dumped me and I was miserable at that time. But look at me now. I survived and I'm fine. Everything always feels the worst when you're actually in the moment. But if you think about those times where you thought that the world was coming down on you, fast forward 5 years, you're fine.
Well, that's the when you're creative, what people don't understand, especially in the capitalistic culture we live in, is that it's there is no like linear there is no linear anything. Like you have it's like feast and famine. Being creative is seasons. You have seasons where you reap the harvest and you have seasons where you're planting the seeds. And you just have to be able to live in that duality at all times, because when creativity is not something that's inherently valued in our culture, you're always defending it. There is no like you've made it and you're good forever. Like like it's a constant sort of battle. And I often feel like in those fallow periods, like when you're talking about like, oh yeah, rent is due, I'm always like, sometimes I feel like I'm like in The Sims and I'm like, oh, I have to like pay this bill. And I'm like, what am I doing? It just feels like so
Robotic,
counterintuitive.
yeah.
Yeah, to like what I think I'm here to do. But I'm like, oh, I have these bills I have to pay. So I guess I have to like go get a weird job to like pay them. And I'm always just like, it just feels like sometimes I'm like, I mean, am I in it? Is this a simulation?
Yeah, but I think also too, even to take even with the advice that you said earlier today, you said when there were times where you just surrendered and let go, those are some of the most successful years of your life. And so
Yeah,
sometimes
totally.
it is just really just leaning on that faith and just like going for it, because that leap of faith can bring you more revenue to pay whatever bills you need to pay than you were gonna expect. And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit of that, and also too, we have to there's a poem that one of my good friends, she worked in HR in Los Angeles, and she was a poet. She's actually one of my former clients, and she heard a poem, and the last line of that poem was, do not let this universe regret you. And when she heard that line, she quit her job immediately. She had like $5 in her account, and she's like, I'm going to pursue poetry. And now she is a global phenomenon. I mean, it was on an easy journey because I was there for a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's become a big deal. I mean, Oprah's endorsed her, Maria Shriver has endorsed her, but it took her feeling like the universe was regretting her for her to
Mm,
just surrender and just go for it, and it worked. So that's when we say like the universe will carry you to whatever destination that you are on. Like life has already happened. If you zoom out and you just look at life, not in the present time, but just as a scope, you could see like, hey, everything happens for a reason. But because we as human beings are so emotionally driven, we're always like, okay, well, this is happening to me right now, and it's like, ah. But if you could see 5 years down the line, like we could see 5 years in the past, it's gonna be fine.
What was one of the greatest lessons, like during this time period of taking this leap of faith? Like, what was one of your biggest takeaways that you've carried with you?
Um, One of the biggest takeaways I will say is that when it's right, it's right. Um,
Mm.
I put a lot of, I'm working on a project that, I'm happy I'll be announcing pretty soon. But it took a lot of uh, redirecting during the journey to get to the point that I'm at now. But that the redirecting took, oh my gosh, a couple years. But then when it was right, it's boom like that, and it just goes. And that's happened to me several times. I'll put my energy into a project, and it doesn't go, it doesn't go, and it doesn't go. But then when I change just one little thing, or I just redirect it, it'll just take off in a positive direction. And that's kind of what I've been able to lean on and find comfort in. And like we said, no, it is not the quote unquote easiest, but if you really look at it, zoom out, it is easy because you know it's going to be okay.
Well, it's also, I think every creative work has its own timing and timeline, and we don't always get to dictate what that is. Because I have
Hmm.
projects that, blink, they happened, or, opportunities happened. And then other things that I think are really innovative or interesting or important for the time, and they are just not going anywhere. Or you think this person's going to do the deal, they back out, and then you just keep hitting that same roadblock over and over again. And then I say, okay, I'm taking and putting it back on the shelf because I'll take it off when something comes up in sort of natural conversation, but I'm not going to keep pushing something all the time because the universe has a way of showing me when the timing is right.
Hmm. Yeah, timing is everything. There's things that, you know, in 10, 15 years that when the time is right, it's right. And it's again, it's that thing of like looking at, oh, that's why that happened at this time and why it didn't happen at that time. You know what I mean? And so when we look at things zooming out, it all makes sense. But I think it's the thing of like not giving up on what you want to do. Be flexible with it. Sometimes I think a lot of people have a very steadfast vision of what they want, and we can no longer work in silos. And so it takes the collaboration to make something really brilliant and well-rounded. And I think once you let the right people in with intent, for sure, just not everybody can just come sit at the table. But when people really collaborate, they could do something really magical. And sometimes it takes letting go of a little bit and being flexible while staying steadfast in the principle and the mold of what you're doing.
How do you know if someone is the correct collaborator for the project? Like, because there's so many terrible, collaboration stories, and I feel like you have a good sense of what works or who you work well with. Like, how do you read that in a room when you're trying to pitch a project? Like, what is your sort of guiding force there?
Fresh for good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
no, I think that I always want to learn from people. And so I will say, one thing, it depends on what you're looking for, but I always want to collaborate with people who bring something that I'm not bringing. Because if we're
Mm.
bringing the same thing to the table, that's kind of counterproductive. So someone that brings something, I know a lot of people say, oh, people that know more than me, which I think is great, but I also think is something that is just different from you. Like what is different that they're bringing to the table that you're not? And also too, realizing that people are not meant to be in a collaborative space forever, just like a relationship or romantic relationship. Some people you could date for a year and you could get what you need from them, but after that year, it's time to separate, and both parties feel it. It's the same way with working relationships. It's like, for example, I was on a project that we started off very good, but then not it just ended up not being the right partnership at the end. But we did complete something that was amazing. But when it came to moving that forward, that relationship forward, it just didn't work. And so I think it's also recognizing that some people are not meant to be collaborative partners forever. And when the time is up, the time is up.
Yeah. And that's a hard, as a loyal person or as someone, for example, I think Emma Grady said this on her podcast, who's I think she runs Skims and a bunch of these other big,
Hmm.
good American Kardashian brands. But she was saying that when you build a company, there's people that are builders, and you hit this next tier of the company, and you need different people to take the company to the next level. And as a founder and someone who identifies, I'm a builder. Like, I'm not the person to take you from whatever, 5 million to 500 million. Maybe I could do that. I don't really want to do that. I like building. That's sort of where I think is the most fun. And it's hard when you're a founder to let go of people that help build your company because they put their blood, sweat, and tears in helping you build something. And you want to be loyal to that. But at the same time, there's different levels of companies, different levels of your development. And sometimes that asks you to let go of something to move forward. And I think
Hmm.
it's a really tricky thing to figure out whether it's a creative partnership or a business is when's the right time to let go. And when it's not like I'm letting you go. It's in the highest interest of both parties because that person is not going to be happy at that next stage of the company. That next project, they may not feel as creatively fulfilled as you do. And so it's actually in what's the highest good for each other. But as human beings who feel like, well, I don't want them to be mad at me or not like me, we go through all these other exercises. We have to remember that we're serving people's best talents in a lot of ways. And it doesn't have to be a contentious departure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people a lot of times take things personally, um,
Yeah.
just because that's human nature, but that's not what it is all the time. I mean, I could bring up another story with while we're talking about the PR firm. When I started doing, believe we talked about Kiss and Tell before. That was the LGBT organization I started in 2015 or 14. And that was around the time where my PR company that I started in New York was doing fairly well. And I remember once I started, I think it was two events in to Kiss and Tell with these live events I was doing, these panel discussions. I was fired like twice in the same week by two separate clients that had nothing to do with each other. And um, in that it was scary because again, the rent is still due. But I recognized in that moment, it's like, oh, okay, I'm starting something. I need to put my energy into this. And Kiss and Tell led me to the White House, led me to working with the CDC, led me to all these different um, endeavors that I didn't see at the time, or I couldn't identify specifically at the time, but I knew that I was onto something great. And the fact that I was let go by two different clients, it wasn't anything personal or anything I was doing wrong. It was just like, oh, we can't afford you anymore, or like, oh, it was like things like that. And when I saw that, I remember just like, one, like, okay, what am I going to do to pay for things? But then two, I was thankfully sharp enough or aligned enough to realize that I needed to put my attention into this, what I was building. And it was a
Yeah.
podcast, and I mean, we had over, 500,000 streams on a podcast that we started in my sister's living room. So
Yeah.
it all works out.
No, it also forces you. Like when I first moved to LA, I got hired on the spot. I moved here overnight, like went back to New York, packed up my whole life over a weekend, like moved here and was like, I'm doing this. I'm all in on this job. Didn't know if that meant I was going to be in LA forever, but for the time being, I committed. And 8 months in, I had a mutual firing quitting with my boss, essentially. And the bottom fell out.
So you
I'm
get it.
Yeah. I had moved my whole life here. I had no social life because I was the only producer in the department. So I was working 24/7, developing, producing because it was like the digital arm of a big production company. And so we'd sign all these talent deals. And so I'm like turning myself inside out to make all of this a success. And had done a great job, had done an excellent job seeing that I had very little support. And so when we had this mutual firing quitting, it for me, I did take it personally because it felt like I've been done nothing but excellent work and I've moved here in service of your thing. And it's not like I have a great life right now. I have no friends. I'm like, miserable. And it was a values issue. Like him and I morally were not on the same page. The
Hmm.
way that he operated was not what I saw fit. And ultimately, like, I was too young to really know that that was always going to end that way and that this was actually not for me. But it was right after that I took like a month to really like sit and figure out what I wanted to do next. And I'd had this idea that was in the back of my brain that I thought someone else was going to do. And it was like the guy I was dating at the time was an entrepreneur. All these like men around me are entrepreneurs. And I was like, they're not any smarter than me. And that's when I started my company. And that, obviously the company failed. But the point is that wasn't the point. The point was who I became and who I learned through that journey never would have happened had I stayed in the system that I was in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And did you learn valuable lessons from your company and building it?
I think the most important values and lessons you could ever learn. I mean,
It
all the
wasn't a
work that I do
failure.
now,
It
no,
wasn't a
100%. The
fail.
spiritual and internal journey was a massive success.
Yeah.
Externally, if your only metric is did you make a lot of money on that venture, then it was a failure. But obviously, you and I speak a similar language. We
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
the ultimate success. Like everything I do now is a direct result of that company.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like it may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but once you go through it and address your emotions, because emotions are, they're real. There may not be the reality of what's happening, but they're real. And once you address your emotions and just put your best foot forward, just keep on going. It's good.
So I want to talk about policy work because I personally these days am a little bit obsessed with
Yeah.
policy. You know a lot about policy. I have been intently studying right now. The times we live in have brought me to this realization that we have all these people whose hearts and minds are in the right place. We don't have enough sort of collective organization. And when I look at historically what has really mattered or has created legacy change, it has been policy. So if we go back to like, I just read this book, Moral Ambition by Rutger Bregman, which I highly recommend to everybody. But in this book, he alerted me to Ralph Nader's life before he ran for president, which I didn't know that much about. I didn't know that Ralph Nader had funded this elite group of like lawyers, like a legal think tank, and basically was like, what are the things that we can change that will save millions of lives? And it was really simple stuff that today still persists. The Clean Air and Water Act, which currently the party's trying to dismantle, but the institution that we're living in is trying to dismantle. But that small shift is responsible for saving millions and millions of lives. And so I've been really digging in, like, what are the things, like, is there a way to sort of galvanize more people around policy? We all have so much power, even our own local government, to make a difference. So as someone who has done this, can you talk to me a little bit about how the process works and your experience?
Yeah. So the process can vary, but I'll just give just a general explanation, if you will. So first is there what's the problem? Like, what are you trying to solve? Like for example, there was a um, leaf blower initiative that I am actually still currently working on, and in the city of Los Angeles, leaf blowers are actually illegal to use, and um, there was a situation where I was at an event and someone had told me like, "Hey, we're tired of gas-powered leaf blowers, and everyone should have electric-powered leaf blowers, and you should go to Costco and spend $150 on a leaf blower." And so I was like, "Okay, well, not everyone has $150, so let's start there." And I did some research and found that there was actually a program that is put out by AQMD to subsidize 85% of these costs. Um, and that was actually implemented because there was a bill that passed, I believe, in 2022. Don't quote me on that. But it was supposed to get rid of all the gasoline powered leaf blowers because right now, gasoline powered leaf blowers cause more. pollution than small cars, to transfer them to electric. As we know, funds run out, et cetera, et cetera. But we need those policies to be up to date with what's currently happening. And so now that it's illegal to one, sell and then use um, leaf blowers that are gasoline powered, it's created this whole entire dilemma. And that doesn't include, what's going on in this country when it comes to ICE and deportation, because that plays another role into it as well. So it's really just connecting with lawmakers that have um, a interest and passion in bringing this to the forefront. It's working with the NGOs, the nonprofits who also have the passion. Data is key because when we talk about these things with anything that passes a law, the answer from the other side is going to be, well, why should we do this? Why should we implement it? And if you could say, hey, 70% of landscapers in Southern California are informal, which means they don't have, licenses, but they're here doing the work and making California beautiful. So like, how do we accommodate these people that are really working and making California a great place into these policies? So it's a research, it's data, it's tenacity because it takes quite literally years to get anything passed,
Yeah.
and or even to make it to the state assembly or the Senate, and that could be a no, just like that, and then you may have to revisit it. I mean, the Equality Act, I mean, that's been on the table in Congress for I think 10 years now, and so but it's still there. So it just takes a lot of tenacity. It takes a lot of um, courage, and it's also being in strategy as well. Sometimes you have to be really strategic and phrase things. I mean, we think about how a lot of the organizations were saying same-sex marriage for years, but then as soon as they changed it to marriage equality, it was like, oh,
Right.
I want marriage to be equal. And so it takes strategy. It takes the right people to really just push things forward. And just not letting the opposition stop you from getting what you need to get done.
So I love this example because there's so many tiny things like you're talking about, like leaf blowers. We probably driving by don't even think that's contributing to more pollution as small cars. And there's so many small examples of this that we can all get galvanized by in our community. And oftentimes like the overlooked ordinary things are the most impactful. It's not always like the sexy issue that's going to really make some big difference, or that big sexy issue just might take 50 years to get done. Like, what are these tiny things that you can create real, like seismic change in a shorter amount of time? And so if I'm like just someone who like maybe I have an issue I'm passionate about, maybe I'm researching issues, but I'm not at all connected to the political sphere. I know very little about legal like strategy and policy. What do you suggest? How does that person begin?
Yeah, so I would first, I mean, depending on how you want, well, where you live is a big component because the political climate of where you live makes a difference on who's in the seat on where you live. So, for example, I live in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a very big city. We have 15 city council members. I also live in California. That is, I know, I forgot how many, there's a lot of people. So it's a big state. And so there's a lot of people to go through. So I would just research what elected officials have in the past, try to pass laws that are in the same genre as what you're trying to do. So like for example, if you're trying to do something along the lines of environment, which is leaf blowers, find a senator or an assembly member who's passed something to, or smog checks with cars or something that's similar. And then it's really easy. I always use LinkedIn to just find their team because their team are the people behind the scenes that are making the oil spin and the machine go. They're the oil. And so they have field representatives, they have legal advisors, they have policy advisors, they have a team of people. So if you go like the policy advisors or the field rep, those are the people that you want to talk to initially to have this to start the conversation. Um, and then, but also come with research. Like, hey, if you just come up and say like, hey, I want to do this, and then you say they ask you why, and you have no answer, you need to be able to say and speak to what you're talking about. So just don't start spitballing things like, I want to do this and show up to the council meeting yelling and screaming. Like, no, you have to be able to back up what you're saying, just like with any argument. So yeah, I would. That's what I would do. Just find an elected official that has done work in the same genre of what you're trying to do, and then find their policy advisor or their field representatives. Contact them, find their email. Their email is usually on the senator's website or the assembly member's website, or just find them on LinkedIn too, and just do your research and know what you're talking about. Because I live in California, so it's a lot faster pace. It's the faster pace than other states, but the information is just coming like that, and so you have to be able to spark the interest, like entertainment. If you're pitching a TV show or a new film or a new song, do the elevator pitch. You have up until an elevator ride to get what you have to get out, and so that is the same thing with policy.
This is really helpful. I've always wondered, does it make a difference to, like, when you're applying for college, for example, right? You go meet your college, the local college rep. You go put the face to the name. So when they look at your application, you're like, I'm the one, baby. Does it make a
Hmm.
difference to go to your city council meeting so they know I emailed you, I'm Denise, and I'm here. I want to advocate on the behalf of banning leaf blowers. Like, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I will say this, showing up continuously does make a difference because people could put a face to the name. Showing up one time and doing and testifying for a certain, you have 2 minutes as a stakeholder to testify at city council is not really going to make a difference. It can, but not really. So consistency, and also too, as I mentioned before, with connecting with nonprofit organizations that are in alignment with what you're trying to do as well. Because if more people could come and advocate for something, the better. So, like for example, I've testified at city council, and there's organizations that are all wearing the same T-shirt. So you could see like, hey, this is a lime green T-shirt that says something on it, whatever they're trying to like pass or influence. And so it is the law for stakeholders to get, I mean, depending on where you are in the city of LA, it's 1 minute to 2 minutes, depending on what part of the agenda it is. But you could testify, you could say whatever you have to say. But again, it's that mobilizing that really makes effect, and also just the tenacity. Because if you just show up one time and think you're going to make a change, that's probably not going to happen. So it's connecting with like-minded people, nonprofit organizations that are out there doing the work, and just staying persistent.
Yeah. Yeah, the legal path is a long path, but as I've been digging into sort of what do we do right now and how do we feel less sort of hopeless and hopeful, is policy is really our best path to creating enduring change. And so if anyone is feeling a little bit, I'm like, if you don't know where to put your time, your energy, and your resources, I'm sort of like, that is a great place to be focusing.
Yeah, if you want to change policy, like definitely find nonprofits that are policy driven. Like there's labor unions, there are environmental ones, there's women's rights unions. There's so many different ones, and they need help. And so just finding and aligning yourself with those things is such an important way to make a difference, because you can't do anything on your own. I mean, or you can, but it's going to be 50 times harder. So you might as well get
Yeah.
those 50 other people to really mobilize and just be organized and strategic with what you want to do, and just be very clear with your messaging. Because again, people's time is valuable just like your time is valuable. So if you're clear, concise, and you know what you want to do, and you have the research to back up what you're trying to do, then just go for it.
How has your policy work informed your creative work?
That's an interesting question. I'll say this: you have to be able to think on your toes in every category in life. you know, you have to be able to figure out how to make the person who may hate who may, I say may, hate what you have to say, love what you have to say. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's rephrasing what you have to say. Prime example is, same-sex marriage versus marriage equality. It's the same thing, but like, how do you creatively get the point across to someone who may not be interested in same sex or whatever, like, you
Right.
know what I mean? And so it is creative. And I think that one thing I will say is that the political world is not lacking creative people, it's lacking creativity. I've had a lot of different meetings with people who are fresh out of college, they're young, mid 20s, and they get hired by this elected official, and they have so many different ideas that they want to do. It's change the world.
Right.
But then they realize the bureaucracy and the red tape of it all. And it's like, okay, it's not that easy. And so they get tired, they get exhausted, but you can't. It's yeah, there's a giant machine that's been working this way for hundreds of years, and it's going to take a while to dismantle. But if you get creative with what you want to do, people will listen. I mean, I'll get creative with
I
messaging.
think the times we live in, you have more opportunity than ever to be creative in the political sphere because we're hitting a breaking point on both parties, both sides. Like things are not working. And so if there's ever a time, as we see with Gavin Newsom, like employing new strategies,
Yeah,
trying different things, experimenting. If there's any time to make some noise and pitch crazy ideas, it is now.
yeah, yeah. Because his ideas aren't that crazy if they work.
100%.
I mean, look at
100%.
AOC. AOC's whole entire campaign, which is that was the social media, like, hey, let me get my phone and talk to this phone and talk to the people. Like people, politicians really, really doing that. And like her writing on the fact that she was a bartender in New York, running for Congress, made noise, and she was just very personable and very honest, and that she ran a campaign that way. And so I think it's really just it's studying what's worked before, studying what you want to do, and finding the right people to make that happen.
I think as much as it's a tenuous time, there's a lot of opportunity if we take advantage of it. What's your next big, besides leaf blowing? Is there anything else policy wise you're looking at?
I have what's the phrase? A couple irons in the fire. I'll wait to share those at a later date, but know that I've connected with a lot of different policymakers, a lot of different NGOs that are out there making a difference, and we've done a lot of different research on various things from domestic violence to all types of things. I was also on the DA's advisory board, which gave me another insight to the way that law works, or more of the way that law works and how the way law is applied. And that was interesting for me because on the other side it's like, okay, passing laws, but then on this side it's like, okay, we have the laws, how are they working or not working? And so I kind of got to see both sides for many years on how that is. And if again people are not in tune with what's happening on the ground, people have bad intent, but I also think people have good intent on things that they can't speak to or things they don't know about. And that's when it becomes harmful.
Yeah. I also think people don't know what they don't know. And the more that people are
Mhm.
like, I mean, we're seeing, I just feel like sometimes I'm like, are we in the upside down? Like people a year ago that we had diametrically different opinions politically, we're starting to have the same opinion. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, a lot. I think things can change. I don't think everyone is as fixed in their perspective as we thought. The more that people see things not working or people being exploited, I think people at their core, I do believe people at their core are quite good, and I do believe we all want the same things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say everyone's here is trying to leave unscathed. Like if we can make it through this chapter that we call the human existence in peace, in grace, then you did something right.
Yeah. I so deeply respect and admire the work that you do. Truly, truly, truly. I hope to be a policy change maker myself in the future. And I wonder, are you ruling out running for office?
I've been asked that question for the past decade. I've considered it, and you never know what the future holds.
Yeah, I think politics are I was like, I found Hollywood slow. I don't know if I could do politics, but I think we
It's a
need,
different game.
yeah, but we need people with your heart and mind in the machine. So you have my vote if you choose to.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I definitely want to support your policy journey as well in the outskirts. One of the reasons why I know I mentioned earlier resigning from the neighborhood council. One of the reasons why was because I felt that my efforts were more beneficial on the outside than the inside. because once you are in the machine, you have to follow the machine's rules. And so, sometimes being on the outside without the rules, but the same passion and energy and drive could be more beneficial than being on the inside. But again, as we see, times are always changing, like we talked about earlier. So you never know.
Well, I think that's a good point. We sometimes underestimate how much change we can make from the outside. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much for taking the time today and sharing all this with all of us. I think this is going to help a lot of people who are sort of trying to figure out where they're going next, how to make a difference in the world. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And definitely hit me up anytime if you want me to support or guide you or make any connections.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening. If you do like listening, it would mean the world to us if you could subscribe or review the podcast anywhere that you watch or listen to the podcast. It really helps with the algorithm to share this with the world. I want to give a special thank you to young Spielberg and Sarah Yarkin for their beautiful work on our opening jingle, Dana Boulos for her help with the beautiful art, and to all of you for tuning in and keeping this dream alive. If you want to hear certain topics or from certain guests, please feel free to email us. We really, really want to hear from you and see how we can best support you. See you next time.